From the void, their world seemed almost laughable, a small, fragile sphere suspended in the black infinity of space. Blue oceans shimmered beneath swirling clouds, green continents dotted with settlements, rivers carving delicate scars into the land. Nothing about this planet suggested it could resist our might. Yet, even from this distance, a subtle defiance shimmered, a pulse we could not quantify. Our fleets approached in calculated formation, stretching like predatory shadows across the solar system. Thousands of ships, each bristling with weapons of annihilation, positioned to enforce the inevitability of conquest. Our generals expected the usual: panic, disarray, capitulation. Entire civilizations had fallen before, their surrender preordained by the weight of our superiority. But humans did not conform to expectation. When our first orbital strikes hit, cities crumbled, orbital defenses shattered. And yet, even as buildings burned and skies filled with fire, their primitive vessels surged forward. Thin hulls, outdated engines, archaic weapons, but their maneuvers were precise. Each strike, each evasive turn, carried an intelligence that defied biological plausibility. Entire battalions of our forces fell to what we first dismissed as reckless improvisation. It was not improvisation. It was strategy. Madness, audacity, cosmic arrogance. We tried to isolate leaders, expecting chaos. Instead, coordination held. Units adjusted spontaneously. Civilians repaired defenses even as bombers roared overhead. Engineers adapted weapons mid-battle, repurposing debris and scavenged tech into tactical tools. Every failure, every loss, was immediately integrated into their strategy, teaching others almost instantaneously. From our vantage points in orbit, it became clear: these humans were learning faster than our simulations could calculate, faster than any AI could anticipate. Even fear did not break them. We saw it flicker in eyes, in trembling hands, but it did not halt movement. Every maneuver was precise, every sacrifice purposeful. Humans were resilient in ways our history had never prepared us for. Battles that should have ended in minutes stretched for days. Every assault became a lesson, every misstep a catalyst for adaptation. The planet itself seemed to pulse with life, bending to their will. By the time the first orbital skirmishes ended, our fleet had sustained losses previously considered impossible, and yet we could not extinguish their defiance. A terrifying truth emerged across our command. These creatures were not merely a species, they were a force of nature, fragile, mortal, audacious, and for the first time in millennia of war, we, the conquerors of stars, understood what it meant to feel fear. Earth was no longer a target, it was a crucible, and humanity, in all its chaotic brilliance, was the fire within it. Every strike we had planned, every tactic we had anticipated, had been met with adaptation, creativity, and courage beyond comprehension, and the war was only beginning. From the observation decks of our orbital stations, Earth appeared fragile yet alive. Cities shimmered beneath the curvature of the atmosphere, glass and steel mosaics illuminated by fires and floodlights, fractured yet persistent. We expected patterns of retreat, panic, collapse. Instead, we witnessed a theater of organized chaos. Civilians moved alongside soldiers, improvising defenses with remarkable ingenuity. Schools became command centers, factories transformed into supply hubs, hospitals doubled as fortresses. Entire neighborhoods synchronized their actions with precision, creating defensive networks that our algorithms struggled to model. Streets were rerouted, bridges demolished to create choke points, and debris repurposed as barricades. Human innovation thrived under fire. What struck us most was the fluidity of coordination. Leaders convened in shattered chambers, debating outcomes with logic and foresight rivaling our own war algorithms. But it was not centralized control that amazed us, it was the collective intelligence that emerged from the population. Civilians relayed real-time information to front lines. Scouts communicated through visual cues, audio pulses, and gestures invisible to our sensors. Knowledge spread instantly. Morale, resilience, and tactical insight intertwined into a web of coordination we could not predict. Each act of bravery was contagious. One individual's heroism inspired dozens, dozens inspired hundreds. Ordinary citizens salvaged weapons, repaired vehicles, and rigged defenses, all under bombardment. Even children in small ways contributed. signaling enemy movements, assisting medics, or delivering supplies through dangerous zones. We could detect the psychological ripples across human society as courage amplified courage, hope fueled hope, and initiative propagated faster than our analytical systems could account for. From our sensors, the planet itself seemed to respond. Humans used the environment as a weapon, manipulating terrain, weather observation, and urban structures to maximize strategic advantage. Every obstacle became an opportunity. Cities were not just surviving, they were learning, evolving. Each strike we launched, each orbital bombardment, became a catalyst for adaptation, turning disaster into strategy, vulnerability into innovation. We cataloged their ingenuity, attempting to quantify it. Algorithms failed repeatedly. Predictive models, designed for any species we had ever encountered, collapsed under the complexity of human improvisation. Entire fleets of drones, programmed for optimal efficiency, were repurposed by humans in hours. Vehicles and simple machinery were enhanced beyond design, integrated into defensive networks. We had never witnessed an organism adapt on this scale, so quickly, so intelligently. Even under the stress of annihilation, humans did not succumb to panic. Fear flickered in eyes and muscles, but it was never overwhelming. Every misstep became a lesson. Casualties, though severe, were absorbed into collective knowledge. It was as if the species itself had a distributed consciousness, an evolving intelligence greater than the sum of its parts. Patterns emerged not from algorithms, but from willpower, empathy, and foresight. Their communication was astonishingly effective. Scouts on rooftops signaled threats to hidden command posts. Engineers rigged improvised devices to intercept our transmissions. Civilians transmitted critical tactical data via improvised networks. It was not random, it was sophisticated, adaptive, immediate, and it spread faster than our sensors could track, rendering our predictive models obsolete. From our perspective, the humans were evolving before our eyes. Their society transformed catastrophes into opportunities. Every failure became a template for improvement. Every defensive success, no matter how small, propagated outward, inspiring further action. By mid-orbit, what we had considered observation became education. Humanity was teaching us, without intent, without awareness, how to endure, how to adapt, how to fight with unity, creativity, and courage far beyond expectation. And yet, even as we cataloged and analyzed, a creeping dread spread across our command. The calculations that had always been reliable, predicting surrender, defeat, collapse, failed. Probabilities of human failure plummeted. The species we had dismissed as fragile, inconsequential, and mortal was revealing depths of ingenuity that no simulation could anticipate. We observed small, extraordinary details: a mother shielding children during an airstrike, signaling another squadron to flank, engineers rerouting energy grids to power defensive turrets, pilots coordinating across city sectors without ever meeting in person. These individual acts compounded into an intelligence network that was both decentralized and terrifyingly effective. We began to understand that technology was secondary to will. Strategy was secondary to courage. Humanity's greatest weapon was themselves. By mid-orbit, awe mingled with fear. The humans were no longer a variable in our calculations. They were a force rewriting the equations of war. Every strike we made, every maneuver we attempted, seemed only to accelerate their learning, strengthen their coordination, and deepen our uncertainty. We realized an uncomfortable truth. Humanity did not merely survive, it evolved under fire. Each bombardment, each orbital incursion became a trial, a crucible forging ingenuity, resilience, and audacity. By the time we observed the first coordinated counterattacks from ground and orbital defenses, it was no longer observation, it was documentation of a species transcending our comprehension. And as we retreated slightly to regroup, the humans continued. They adapted, improvised, and coordinated across hundreds of kilometers. Their cities, once fragile mosaics of glass and steel, had become instruments of war. Every human, regardless of age or occupation, contributed. And from our perch above, we realized that we were witnessing something extraordinary. A species converting chaos into mastery, adversity into progress, vulnerability into power. From orbit, a fear began to settle across our fleets. Not the fear of physical harm, but the fear of understanding that we had underestimated a force far beyond calculation. The humans had begun teaching us, without intention, the principles of resilience, adaptation, and unity, and we, the invaders, were learning too late. Our initial offensives assumed a simple reality: fragile biology, limited resources, predictable error. We were wrong. Entire fleets poised for destruction found themselves outmaneuvered by humans operating in ways that defied both logic and probability. What we had labeled improvisation revealed itself as strategy, fluid, adaptive, and terrifyingly effective. Civilians repurposed wreckage, retrofitting buildings and vehicles into defensive fortresses. Engineers reprogrammed our captured drones to counter our own forces, converting advanced technology into weapons against us. The battlefield, from our orbital reconnaissance, appeared alive, as though the planet itself were participating, bending, shifting, responding in tandem with human will. Chaos became a tool. Humans thrived in ambiguity, leveraging unpredictability as a weapon. Our drones, designed for efficiency and precision, faltered under the constant novelty of their tactics. Every maneuver we anticipated was countered by one we had not imagined. Fleets that had crushed entire species before were immobilized, trapped by environmental awareness, psychological anticipation, and raw human creativity. From our vantage point, coordination appeared almost sentient. Humans acted in a decentralized hive-like intelligence, yet each individual retained creativity, initiative, and adaptability. Scouts relayed visual cues from rooftops and mountain ridges. Engineers transmitted tactical data through improvised networks, and combat units coordinated assaults without ever communicating directly. The battlefield was a living organism, pulsating with decisions that defied predictive modeling. Casualties mounted on our side, and doubt began to spread among our command. How could a species so biologically fragile, so physically limited, sustain such precision, such audacity? Our algorithms, designed to anticipate and counter every maneuver, failed repeatedly. Every human victory, every clever adaptation, shattered preconceived notions of dominance. We recorded acts of brilliance that were almost mythic. Pilots navigated asteroid belts at speeds that should have exceeded neural reaction times. Engineers converted wreckage into precision weapons.
Civilians anticipated enemy movements through intuition and experience. Even children played roles in survival, signaling troop movements, aiding logistics, or distracting enemy reconnaissance with deceptive tactics. Every element of society was weaponized in real time, integrated into a living, breathing defense network. Their ingenuity was not confined to machinery. Humans manipulated their environment strategically. Entire neighborhoods became traps for our ground and orbital forces. Flooded streets diverted tanks, fires obscured surveillance, and debris funneled troops into calculated zones. They learned from every encounter, adapting faster than any species we had cataloged. With every failed attack we launched, they adjusted, improved, and innovated. From our sensors, it became apparent that ingenuity was not a trait of select individuals, it was species-wide. Ordinary humans made strategic decisions with precision. Knowledge spread instantly. Communication was not just information, it was influence, morale, coordination. Human creativity turned limitation into advantage. They converted scarcity into opportunity, fragility into strategy. We began to document patterns, attempting comprehension, but understanding eluded us. Each maneuver seemed unpredictable, yet perfect. Each improvisation seemed chaotic, yet efficient. They had transcended the simple laws of battle. Vulnerability became strength. Limitations became tools. Humans were no longer merely surviving. They were architects of their own fate, converting adversity into triumph. Even our reconnaissance struggled to keep pace. Drones were hijacked mid-flight, converted into weapons against us. Orbital strikes intended to disrupt logistics only accelerated adaptation, forcing the humans to evolve even faster. The battlefield became a proving ground, not just for survival, but for ingenuity. Every day, every engagement reinforced a single truth: humans would never be predictable. Our collective awe hardened into respect, and respect, uncomfortably, into subtle terror. We had faced countless species, countless civilizations, but none had turned their very fragility into power. None had weaponized their limitations. None had learned and adapted at such speed and precision. We were witnessing a species that did not merely exist, it thrived under fire. We began to catalog not just tactics, but principles: adaptation, improvisation, decentralized coordination, environmental manipulation, collective morale. They were lessons in ingenuity, innovation, and resilience at a scale we could barely grasp. And yet, even as we recorded them, a profound unease settled across our fleets. For the first time, we realized that human ingenuity was not a temporary advantage, it was a defining characteristic. Their resilience, creativity, and adaptability were magnified under pressure. Every setback, every loss, only refined them.
Our strikes, our strategies, our overwhelming force, all were being converted into experience, knowledge, and new forms of power. And as the humans continue to adapt, innovate, and thrive, the undeniable truth emerged across our command. We were witnessing the birth of a species that would not simply endure, they would dominate the battlefield through ingenuity. Every action we took, every move we anticipated, fed their evolution. Every mistake we exploited became a lesson for them. And in that realization, a fear we had never known began to take root. We were no longer conquerors. We were students, unprepared and unwilling, learning from a species we had assumed fragile. Humanity was no longer just surviving. Humanity was inventing itself in the crucible of war. Every structure they erected, every tactic they devised, every daring maneuver they executed was a declaration. Fragility did not define them. Limitation did not bind them. Every action screamed audacity, intelligence, and courage beyond the comprehension of our fleets. By the end of our observation, the pattern was unmistakable. Humans were no longer underdogs. They were architects of fate, engineers of ingenuity, and masters of adaptation. We had underestimated them once, and now the consequences were unfolding. The battlefield had become their laboratory, and we, the invaders of worlds, were the unwitting subjects. A single, undeniable conclusion emerged from the haze of smoke, fire, and adaptive brilliance. Humanity was no longer merely a species to be conquered. Humanity had become a force that reshaped the very definition of possibility. And from our orbital vantage, we, calculating, methodical, invincible, began to understand the scale of what we had faced. Humanity were not fragile. Humanity were not predictable. Humanity were not bound by limitation. They were audacious, brilliant, adaptive, and terrifyingly unstoppable. And in that knowledge, we felt, for the first time, true fear. By the time our fleets fully encircled Earth, the scale of resistance became impossible to ignore. We expected submission. We expected the familiar spiral of chaos and collapse. Instead, we encountered a species prepared for apocalypse, an entire civilization hardened by attrition into a force of astonishing coordination. Continents mobilized as if a single organism breathed through them. Civilians transformed infrastructure into defensive networks. Schools became command posts, factories transformed into supply hubs, and hospitals doubled as fortresses. Streets and bridges were rerouted, demolished, or fortified to maximize defensive advantage. Even amidst fire and rubble, human initiative flourished. Ordinary citizens improvised weapons, coordinated logistics, and maintained communication across vast distances. The planet itself seemed to pulse with a strange, decentralized intelligence. Our orbital bombardments reduced cities to ash, yet new ones rose overnight, fortified and prepared.
Strategic genius emerged not only from generals, but from engineers, teachers, doctors, and civilians alike. Every human acted simultaneously as soldier, strategist, and innovator. Task forces sent to cripple key installations found themselves ensnared in traps that combined environmental awareness, predictive psychology, and raw intuition. Human tactics turned the battlefield into a theater of ingenuity we could not anticipate. Fires raged across metropolises, smoke filling skies thick with orbital debris, yet humans persisted. They coordinated evacuation routes, improvised shelters, and redirected resources even as the ground shook beneath our bombardments. Pilots navigated crumbling cities, moving between skyscrapers with precision that defied both physics and expectation. Engineers rerouted power grids to maintain defensive networks, rerouting entire energy systems on the fly. Civilians adapted quickly, improvising devices to detect and counter our drones. From our sensors, their audacity became almost contagious. Every act of heroism inspired dozens, dozens inspired hundreds. We recorded countless examples. A medic running through an exposed street to aid the wounded, a student signaling enemy movements from a collapsed roof, a factory worker rerouting machinery to launch improvised missiles at our advancing forces. Coordination extended across thousands of kilometers, a decentralized intelligence unified not by command but by collective purpose. As our fleets attempted orbital strikes, humans repurposed debris, turning ruined skyscrapers into defensive structures, redirecting shrapnel and fire to hinder our movements. Streets became funnels, rivers became moats, and rubble became traps. They learned faster than we could destroy. Every destruction taught them adaptation. Every attack became a new opportunity for innovation. From the ground to orbit, they displayed audacity that confounded our command. Even as our most elite forces attempted targeted assassinations and precision strikes, humans improvised countermeasures that neutralized our advantages. They anticipated maneuvers that our most advanced predictive models could not foresee. Civilians became part of the strategic network, improvising solutions and reinforcing defenses in real time. We began to see patterns of evolution at an unprecedented pace. Entire cities became nodes in a vast adaptive system. Human courage and ingenuity propagated through society like an unstoppable contagion. Our attempts to instill terror failed. Every strike we believed would break morale instead strengthened it. Fear transformed into focus, despair into innovation. The battlefield was no longer a contest of firepower, it was a crucible for adaptation. Even as continents burned and oceans churned from orbital bombardment, humans continued. Entire networks of supply, communication, and strategy remained intact. Every setback was cataloged, analyzed, and corrected within hours.
Leaders fell, but new figures emerged spontaneously, guiding civilians, coordinating counterattacks, and ensuring continuity of effort. The more we tried to suppress them, the stronger they became. We realized a terrifying truth. Conventional warfare had no meaning here. Humans had redefined the battlefield itself. Every advance we made, every position we attempted to secure was anticipated, adapted to, and often neutralized. Siege warfare, a tool that had crushed entire species, became futile against their resilience. Every orbital strike, every tactical maneuver fed their learning. Their fortresses, networks, and strategies evolved faster than our most sophisticated simulations could track. From our vantage, awe merged with dread. These creatures, small and fragile by any biological standard, wielded a force of will that surpassed our most advanced weaponry. They were a civilization in motion, improvising, learning, adapting, and teaching us what true indomitability meant. Every moment of resistance, every act of courage, every innovation became a statement. Humans would not yield. By the end of the first month of full siege, the inevitability of our victory began to fade. We had underestimated their capacity to endure, to innovate, and to inspire one another. Siege warfare was no longer about destruction. It was about witnessing the resilience of a species that refused to be broken. And as our fleets regrouped, we began to understand a frightening truth. Earth was no longer a prize to conquer. It was a crucible for a species transcending all expectation. The war had shifted. It was no longer our advantage. It was theirs. As the war dragged on, phenomena emerged that defied all logic and precedent. Humans displayed capabilities that should have been impossible. Physical feats, psychological endurance, moral courage far beyond what any known biology could sustain. From our observation decks, we could see their pilots maneuver spacecraft with precision that seemed faster than their neural response times, spinning, banking, weaving through debris fields, anticipating enemy moves before sensors could detect them. Ground forces endured environmental hazards that would have incapacitated any other species. Toxic air, irradiated soil, collapsing structures, extreme temperatures, and yet they pressed forward. Civilians contributed with intensity bordering on fanaticism, not blind devotion, but a purposeful, reasoned drive that magnified collective resilience. Entire cities were transformed into logistical hubs overnight. Workers repaired damaged infrastructure while simultaneously improvising new defensive technologies. Children, teenagers, and elders alike played roles in the war effort. From signaling enemy movements to engineering improvised weapons, every human contributed. Every action had purpose, intent, and consequence. Setbacks became lessons. Losses, though severe, catalyzed efficiency, ingenuity, and adaptation. We observed squads learning from each defeat, reconfiguring tactics in real time. Defensive positions were redesigned mid-battle. Supply routes rerouted spontaneously to avoid orbital bombardment. Engineers repurposed captured materials to create countermeasures against our most advanced technology. It was evolution accelerated by fire, pain, and necessity. Cultural cohesion, empathy, and loyalty became weapons as potent as any armament. Communities shared knowledge instantly, inspired one another, and absorbed casualties without collapse. Leadership structures flexed dynamically. When key leaders fell, others rose seamlessly to fill the gaps, often improvising strategies superior to their predecessors. Ideas propagated faster than our reconnaissance could track.
The humans were not merely reacting, they were anticipating, innovating, and redefining combat in real time. Even as our elite task forces struck at critical installations, humans adapted. Barricades appeared before bombardment could hit, drones were reprogrammed mid-flight to attack us, and entire urban centers transformed into traps for our ground and orbital forces. Every maneuver we executed, every strike we calculated, became part of their learning. They converted adversity into advantage, turning weakness into a weapon. Their endurance was staggering. Pilots stayed in command for hours beyond biological limits. Ground units traversed irradiated terrain, scavenged supplies, and maintained precision coordination under stress that should have caused collapse. Civilians carried out logistical missions under fire, transporting vital materials through contested zones. Every human exhibited a persistence and ingenuity that surpassed even the most advanced military AI we had deployed against them. The pace of adaptation was frightening. They were learning faster than any evolutionary algorithm could predict. Defenses were reinforced, offensive tactics modified, countermeasures implemented before we could exploit openings. Every engagement, every tactical exchange refined their systems and strategies. The more we attempted to dominate, the stronger they became. They were not merely reacting to threats, they were mastering them. From our alien perspective, humans were evolving faster than evolution itself. The battlefield became a laboratory where weakness became strength, fear became focus, and every casualty became an education. Humanity converted fragility into advantage, improvisation into strategy, and courage into a force of nature. Even the smallest acts were amplified by collective cohesion. A medic crossing a devastated street to save a wounded child inspired an entire squad to hold their position under impossible odds. Engineers repurposing a damaged drone to disrupt our strikes influenced the tactics of entire regiments. Leaders falling in battle did not halt progress. Their absence became a catalyst for ingenuity, forcing systems and individuals to adapt on the fly.
We observed humans responding to existential threat with a clarity and purpose that surpassed calculation. Every setback became a template for innovation. Every obstacle became an opportunity. Their ingenuity extended beyond physical capability into moral and psychological resilience. Communities rallied together, reinforced one another, and inspired courage in every participant. They had transformed adversity into a weapon that no force could suppress. Even our most sophisticated predictive models faltered. We could not anticipate the speed at which humans learned, adapted, and evolved. Every calculation of their defeat collapsed under the complexity of their collective action. Every action we took became a lesson for them. Every assault sharpened their defenses. By mid-campaign, our fleets began to doubt not just their tactics, but the fundamental assumption of dominance. Humans were no longer just a species to suppress. They had become a force redefining the very rules of engagement. Their ingenuity was systemic, pervasive, and unstoppable. They were architects of adaptation, designers of innovation, and masters of resilience. From our orbital stations, we cataloged the terrifying truth. Humans had transcended their biology, their limitations, and the conventional rules of warfare. Every physical feat, every technological improvisation, every act of courage became part of a larger network of evolution, learning, and adaptation. They had become something far more dangerous than any army. They had become truly human. And in that recognition, a chilling realization spread across our fleets. Victory was no longer certain. It was no longer even likely. The humans had become a force beyond prediction, beyond control, and beyond comprehension. Every strike we launched only strengthened them. Every obstacle we imposed only honed their resolve. Humans were beyond limits, beyond fear, beyond calculation, beyond expectation. And in that understanding, awe became terror, admiration became dread. They were no longer merely fighting, they were teaching. And in the crucible of war, humanity was being forged into a species that could not be defeated by conventional means. For the first time since our fleets had crossed the void, the humans were no longer simply defending, they were dictating the tempo of war. What began as desperate, improvisational defense had transformed into a series of coordinated counteroffensives that shocked even our most conservative analysts. Precision replaced improvisation, strategy replaced instinct. Every maneuver, every strike exploited weaknesses we had failed to even identify.
Entire fleets became immobilized, not through sheer force, but through cunning, intuition, and the uncanny ability of humans to anticipate our movements. Even when we scrambled to mask our intentions, to obscure our trajectories, human pilots and commanders adapted with a prescience that defied comprehension.
Orbital swarms were intercepted with minimal losses. Ground-based strike units were ensnared in traps that leveraged terrain, physics, and human intuition in ways that no algorithm could predict. The tide of battle, once assumed unassailable, now shifted against us. Civilians became architects of war. Improvised devices, scavenged technology, and spontaneous engineering solutions transformed ordinary urban landscapes into lethal arsenals. Factories produced weapons we had thought impossible for such a species to construct. Engineers and scientists repurposed captured drones, converting them into reconnaissance platforms, missile systems, and adaptive defense units. Even children, teenagers, and non-combatants contributed through observation, signaling, and logistical support. Their collective ingenuity magnified every strike and every maneuver. As our losses mounted, a subtle but profound shift rippled through our command. For the first time, we felt not fear, but genuine dread. The humans were no longer constrained by survival alone. They fought to perfect themselves, to test limits, and to inspire one another. Morale shifted with every small victory. Even civilians celebrated tactical achievements, singing, cheering, mourning, and laughing in a strange alien synthesis that seemed to reinforce resilience throughout the population. Their joy, sorrow, and determination became a force multiplier, infusing combatants with energy that our psychological models could not replicate. Every engagement became a testament to human adaptability. Pilots executed maneuvers that circumvented decades of tactical doctrine. Engineers constructed traps and countermeasures in hours. Soldiers improvised tactics mid-battle, drawing on intuition honed from both experience and observation. Their creativity turned chaos into opportunity. Their audacity transformed the battlefield into a proving ground for spirit as much as skill. Our attempts at dominance became counterproductive. Every calculated strike we launched was met with not only resistance but innovation. Every assault became a training ground for human forces, accelerating learning and strengthening coordination. The more we sought to suppress them, the stronger they became. Their adaptation was not reactionary, it was anticipatory. Every defeat became a lesson, every obstacle a stepping stone to greater ingenuity. From our sensors, the battlefield seemed alive with human consciousness. Coordination was decentralized yet seamless. Signals transmitted through unconventional means, light, sound, movement, propagated across units, linking individuals into a collective intelligence that was responsive, intuitive, and relentless. Each unit understood its role instinctively, yet retained freedom to improvise. It was a blend of individuality and hive-like synergy that defied our models of organized warfare. The tide shifted further as humans began to seize the initiative.
Counteroffensives were launched with precision strikes against previously unassailable positions. Supply lines were cut, orbital paths disrupted, and advanced weapon systems neutralized. Each human advance was both adaptive and anticipatory, exploiting openings we had never foreseen. Our fleets, once the embodiment of inevitability, found themselves retreating, regrouping, and reassessing as humans converted vulnerability into strength. Even the smallest acts carried immense consequence. Civilians signaling enemy approaches from rooftops allowed squads to ambush entire battalions. Engineers repurposing debris could disable entire squadrons of drones. Pilots coordinated with ground units in unprecedented synchronicity, creating traps and countermeasures in real time. Every action multiplied the effectiveness of others, forming a network of ingenuity that was unstoppable in its efficiency. By the midpoint of the counteroffensive, it became clear that conventional strategy had been rendered irrelevant. Humans had rewritten the rules of engagement. They fought not merely to survive, but to excel. Every setback became an opportunity. Every assault, every trap, every adaptation revealed a species that refused to yield, that converted fear into innovation and chaos into mastery. From the alien vantage point, the battlefield had transformed into something almost mythic. What we once considered predictable outcomes were replaced by fluid, dynamic engagements, shaped entirely by human will, creativity, and resilience. The humans had become the architects of the war itself, turning our technology, our tactics, and our expectations into tools for their evolution. Our forces, trained, calculated, and confident in their superiority, now faced uncertainty and despair. The humans' relentless ingenuity and audacity had shifted the paradigm. Where we expected surrender, they delivered strategy. Where we expected retreat, they advanced. Where we expected chaos, they orchestrated precision. The tide had turned, not through overwhelming power, but through ingenuity, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. From the alien vantage point, It was terrifying, humbling, and awe-inspiring. Humanity had become more than a species. They had become a force of adaptation, resilience, and relentless creativity. As we retreated to regroup, the truth was undeniable. The humans had seized control of their fate. They had proven that intellect, audacity, and willpower could surpass even the most advanced weapons. The battlefield was no longer ours. It belonged, in essence and spirit, to humanity. And as our fleets withdrew to reconsider their strategies, a new fear took root among our command. Victory was no longer just improbable, it was becoming impossible. Humanity had not only turned the tide, they had transcended the very concept of limitation.